What college course did you walk into thinking you would ace but, in the end, was a big old slice of humble pie? I needed 2 elective credits to graduate from my senior year. I decided to take legal psychology as one of them as I was a criminal justice major and thought it sounded interesting. Holy crap, I almost didn't graduate because of that class. As a criminal justice major, I hated all of my law-themed courses. Took a class called movement and it ended up being like an advanced neuroanatomy class. Wine appreciation. The course offered 3 wines every class to sample, which is why I took it. It also offered a big frick you crash course in viticulture. It was an elective that took up all my time just to scrape by, but I now know what the Bordeaux region is, so there's that. Came here to say this. I loved it, but it was a full-on botany and chemistry class mixed with geography. Hard. I'm so glad I took it pass-fail so I could pass with a C. It has served me well though. Geography 101. It was supposed to be an easy A to boost my GPA, but it was insanity about the geopolitics of borders and other things that weren't what is this river. I got my A, but it was no joke. Geography helps explain in some ways the geopolitics of nations. It's critical for industry and supply chain field and in international relations. Accounting. I kept hearing all you gotta know other terms. Turns out there are a lot of terms, and a lot of rules you have to understand. I still don't fully understand, and it's been 4 years. Accounting and finance are butt kickers for sure. The math doesn't get more complicated than very basic calculus for valuing derivative securities. It's that the processes you have to follow are extensive and often not intuitive. Color theory. I thought we just learned about the color wheel. Number. Oh no, I was horribly wrong. History of vampires. Sounded like the easiest A I'd ever get. Turned out to be the intense history of vampires. Famous vampires, vampire authors, vampire inspiration, Eastern European culture and societies, vampire traits within specific regions, etc. Knowing the exact dates of hard to pronounce Eastern European towns and vampires was much harder than a class on Dracula. That actually sounds interesting. Survey of art history II. My professor had the insane idea to apply a bell curve to the grading within each class. After the first test most people dropped his course like a chunk of plutonium, so there were 7 of us left, only 1 of whom could earn an A and 1 of whom would get an F regardless of their actual scores. I had to put in more work and fight harder for a B in that class than I did for A's in graduate level honors English courses in my minor. The coursework itself was very interesting, though too fast-paced and under too much grade pressure for me to learn it well. Years later I only remember the trauma. The teacher of my survey I was a much more effective teacher. Her class was hard, but we did have enough time to actually absorb the information and commit it to lasting memory. Seems like another crappy professor. Philosophy 230 Introduction to Ethics. Didn't think it would be difficult at all, but it ends up being about 1,500 pages of reading. Reading Confucius, Aristotle, Plato is tough reading for me. I liked it, but it's slow going reading that kind of material. Then having to read modern essays on ethics and relate them to these ethical and moral theories, all while taking an online class and having no professor feedback because he is a philosopher type who likes to sit back and see what happens. It's in quotes because it was in his introduction to the class that he wouldn't really be a participant. Cool class, and I learned a lot. But I spent about 4x hours on this class than I did in my calculus class that also had a professor with the hands-off approach. You needed more chili. Macroeconomics. It seemed like all my classmates were sailing through, but even the most basic concepts made no sense to me. I could not understand anything. Music theory wasn't as straightforward as I thought. I took an elective in college called Death and Dying. It was once a week and very depressing, so I started to skip it and the tests became like medical examiner's reports. Not what I signed up for. Manner of death, shaken baby, cause of death, broken neck, real happy stuff. Totally bombed it. I remember having to take that class and our final was to write an essay and talk about a personal loss in front of the classroom that we've experienced. Crap was hella depressing and awkward. Classical Greek. I love learning languages, but this was ridiculously hard. Canoeing. Yes, like, with water. We were required to have one aquatic physical sport. I live near a big, slow river. How could this go wrong? A. Dumb ass partner. B. Canoes are heavy. C. Canoeing requires some skill apparently. At least they had water. Took a sailing course at my college once, and we had to do that crap on land. One old guy, every class has one, was really struggling with it. At one point we had to abandon him when he went overboard. It was a crazy course. Organic chemistry. Up to that point I had seen nothing but an A in a chemistry related course, high school or university. I got a 35% average on that freaking course the first time. Quite the shock. Organic chemistry is quite a change in pace compared to other chemistry courses. Everything goes from quantitative to almost strictly qualitative, and there are so many reactions to keep track of. I don't think I ever got a single synthesis question fully correct on an exam. Indo-European folktales. Had to check off the lit requirement. Figured a fun English class about children's stories and such would be a cakewalk. Needless to say, some of those folktales are more complicated than Shakespeare. Post-colonial literature. I'm personally a dumbass and walked in thinking it would basically be American lit from after the colonial period and would be easier to ace because sure, I'll read Mark Twain, Fitzgerald and Faulkner. I was super wrong. And so was 80% of the class apparently because they dropped after the first day. I stuck it out, though, and I'm really glad I did because I got to read and discuss a lot of stuff I had never heard of and it really helped expand my literary world. For some reason I chose to take post-colonial eco-criticism and my god I don't know why. Ended up reading some good books but it was a lot more than I was expecting. Speech writing. I think what fricked me up was having already been through law school and taking very nuanced positions on issues. That doesn't make for good speeches where you need lots of rah-rah-rahs and things simplified to the point of falsehood. So I guess you aren't interested in a career in politics. Science fiction and fantasy. This was a 2-hour elective at my school, and the course catalog even specified that it couldn't be applied as one of the literature courses English majors needed to take. So that means everyone who signed up for this class was taking it because they were just interested in the subject. We read 12-13 books in that class. Books, mind you, not short stories. Some were short, like The Island of Dr. Moreau, Out of the Silent Planet, Left Hand of Darkness, but we also read Dune and Fellowship of the Ring. There were also a couple that started off in Russian and had been translated to French then English. Those were fun. Class met Monday and Wednesday. Semesters always started on Wednesday and he expected the first book, pretty short one, read by the following Monday. Midterm and final were handwritten essays. Included questions like compare and contrast characters from the following 7 books. I took this course my junior year working on a degree in Comp. C and math. Every moment I wasn't working on a core class I had my nose in a book. Physics, electricity and magnetism. Yikes. Nutrition. Oh my god, my nutrition class was such a joke. Our professor seriously made it seem like she wanted us to suffer. Basic level human rights. Did you know that civil rights, inalienable rights, and human rights are all different? Because I didn't, but I do now. Glad I took it. I took a class called Dinosaurs. I was told a bunch of football players and athletes took it as an easy science requirement, so I assumed it was a class where we got to watch Jurassic Park or something. Instead, it was an intensive class about the evolutionary traits of dinosaurs with very specific names, traits and timelines. I got a C+ in it, which lowered my GPA from Summa CM Lord to Magna CM Lord. I had to tell my parents my GPA got taken out by fricking dinosaurs. I thought I would ace intro to sociology. I didn't. Logic. Went in expecting some sort of writing-based philosophy class in my last semester of undergrad. It was actually a class full of formulas and proofs. Logic is super fun, but it is not easy. Microeconomics, my first semester at college. Thought how bad could it be if it's just a core? Cried a lot. Got an A. Microeconomics was heck. Cried a lot. Got a D. Still got my credits. Never touching econ again. Intro to logic. Not computer logic, but philosophy type logic. I had taken a couple of philosophy classes and liked them, and this was an intro class, so I figured it would be no problem. As it turned out, the guy teaching it was a practicing attorney with a PhD in philosophy who taught on the side. He was a very tough grader and would just destroy our logical argument. Quantum theory. I thought I'd love it. Cutting edge physics. How cool is this gonna be? Day 1 prof says leave your common sense at the door. It will only get you in trouble in here. Turns out I'm more of an engineering type than theoretical physics type. That course was nuts. It was like 4 months of having to memorize someone's acid trip. Took a psychology class called something like drugs and behavior, thinking it was going to be a fun class about drugs. It was about how drugs actually work in the brain, like blocking receptors and crap. It was still really interesting, and I did fine in the class, but I had to put a lot more work into it than I expected. Anatomy and Phys 234. I had been through nursing school, worked as an EMT, surgical technician and set, so I figured it was going to be cake even though lots of people warned me it would not be. Being a 200 level class, second year college, I figured they were just idiots. They were not idiots. It was hard to the point of being ridiculous. This should have been a 400 level med school class. This was a class with 6 cadaveric bodies and an instructor that thought we all needed MD, level A and P knowledge. This one class was a full-time job. I had 2 days a week off my regular job and spent the 12-15 hours a day on my days off flat out studying for this one class. Forget my other classes. On the first exam, highest score was a 30%. I got a 29%, which was the high point for the curve. But now I know the name of every hole in the skull, the name, origin, insertion and innervation of every muscle in the body, the name of every bone, the 200 plus joints, and a multitude of information I will never likely need to know. I am studying to be a funeral director and had the same experience. Ended up being a weed out class for people wanting to be surgeons. I had to drop another course so I could get a C or better for that one because I couldn't afford to pay the lab fee again. I ended up with a B and a healthy respect for doctors. There is no way I could make it through medical school. Statistical mechanics and thermodynamics. My senior year, I had the brilliant idea to get a physics major to go with my engineering degree. After a month, I dropped that class and the extra major like a bundle of hot potatoes. Mayo, I remember that class. Got a 4/10 on a midterm and got a B. A 7/10 was an A. 50 minutes multiple choice and no partial credit. How many degrees of freedom are in the gas molecule haggis? I took a creative writing class in community college, after acing AP Comp and Lit and being the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper in high school. I thought I would do great. I sucked, but I was terrible. And the girl that sat next to me had this artistic journal with all these great doodles and poetry that should have been made into some kind of spoken word movie. I hadn't felt that dumb and untalented in a while. I had to just shut up and get my credit and get out. I had gone from being in the basic classes to being moved to AP and then becoming a star pupil in high school. The AP kids who had been taking AP courses since middle school started respecting me in my senior year because I had never taken them and was doing freaking awesome. Then I went to community college, not even like a university, and was handed my butt. Yeah, big piece of humble pie for me. Astronomy. I thought we'd just be looking through telescopes. It was a lot of math, and I had to work my butt off for a B. Our astronomy class was pretty basic and we just had to remember basic facts. It was nicknamed Stars for Tards. Geography 201. Didn't know I could fail the study of mountains and landmarks. Music appreciation. Took it in the summer thinking it would be an easy A to counter my probable C in organic chemistry. The tests consisted of the professor playing 25 classical songs on his CD player and we had to name the composer, name of song, etc. All that stuff sounds the same to me. Ended up making a C in music appreciation and an A in organic chemistry. Intro to phonetics. Really did not know what I was getting into, but noped the frick out when we started having to translate speech into the phonetic alphabet. Genetics. Said no one ever. Seriously, Don't frick with genetics. It's just difficult logic puzzles where you have to know some specific rules that only apply to certain situations. Especially heck if your professor is one of those I make everything hard type of people. I took 400 level in organic chemistry and it was absolutely nowhere near the level of difficulty as genetics 200. I went into my first accounting class thinking I had a leg up because I was working as a bookkeeper. I was wrong. Intro art studio class. Oh, you just show up to class and draw. Nope. Here's 12 hours of homework a week. Folk and fairy tales. It was a 200 LVL comp lit class and I was doing a bedsec English Maj at the time. I attended all the lectures, took fantastic notes, wrote my first essay for the class. See with the comment of this is a classic example of a good thesis topic wasted on a bad essay. I was a little put off because my essays were usually B+ at worst. Turns out my essay had been one of the ones marked by the Tay who was brutal to everyone, so the prof agreed to remark all done by them. Most people's grade moved up a couple like C+ to B. Mine stayed at a C. Crushed. Astronomy 101. I figured we would learn about the planets and solar systems and stars and kinda an intro as the name Intro to Astronomy would suggest. It was more math than any math class I ever took. Intro level statistics. Not so much a course, but a semester. My first semester in law school. I was older than a traditional student and had always been one of the smartest guys in the room. And I was going to treat law school like a job since I hadn't had jobs before and none of these smartest kids had, so I'm going to ace this crap. I spent a considerable amount of time wondering how much time law review would take in my second year and whether I'd have a more realistic shot at Magna or Soma in my third year. The first clue I had that I was delusional was our initial reading assignment for torts. It was about 25-30 pages. I was always a quick reader, so I figured an hour, probably much less, on Saturday afternoon should do it. Several hours later I gave up. I didn't finish. I gave up. I had a scholarship that required I keep a 3.0 GPA. I finished that first semester below that line. Trigonometry. Don't get me wrong. I'm decent at math and I basically took this class in high school. My professor was hard. All homework was done on paper and you had to space everything out. Writing a fractions and squeeze them in to save some line paper. You got docked a point. Didn't Ray write the question? Docked points. Circled your answer? Docked points. I also had a small mental breakdown that semester but got a B in that class. Control system shutters. I thought taking a college level ceramics course was a giant joke. Turns out it was a really challenging class and I totally fell in love with being in the studio making things. Influenced talent of my life after that point. I even met my wife in one of the later ceramics courses I took in college. Like this video and this good boy will play you a nice song. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.